more than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to our member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, and 3. Expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, The Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices, guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Row Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Centers program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. A new network of Caribbean SPDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the C2, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SETI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to address the region's structural weaknesses, to recover from the health, economic, and social crises occasioned by the pandemic and prepare for future shocks. It is imperative that we work together as we risk losing recent development gains and seeing millions fall back into poverty. It is time for the region to redirect course and pursue a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all. We are in this together.
But the resilience building agenda is too big for any one stakeholder to address acting alone, and simply bringing together stakeholders, whether at the national, subnational, regional, or global level, is not enough. Effective, focused, and sustained coordination among stakeholders is paramount to provide countries with integrated and comprehensive support.
The OAS, as a hemispheric forum and honest broker, must continue to facilitate this process while we work with member states towards the attainment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together. The future of our region depends on it.
Bueno, la CIM tiene una agenda enorme en el tema de democracia y de liderazgos. El primer ámbito tiene que ver con la gobernanza electoral, para que esta gobernanza electoral responda a las necesidades con las que fue creada, y es buscar los espacios de redistribución del poder. Después hay un programa interamericano sobre liderazgo de las mujeres, donde generamos conocimiento y también tenemos cursos de capacitación. Hay un poderoso curso que ha llegado a más de 1000 mujeres con más de 15 ediciones, que es para candidatas electorales, en las cuales conversamos con ellas, pero también nos ponemos en una agenda de solidaridad y articulación y alianzas entre las mujeres, a pesar de las múltiples diferencias ideológicas o de partidos políticos. También hablamos de los temas de violencia política, porque no es lo mismo llegar que quedarse, y la violencia política es una forma de ejercicio de disciplinar a las mujeres que para que vuelvan al mundo de lo privado y enfrentar la violencia, hacer buenas investigaciones, buenas leyes que permitan sancionar la violencia política. Es parte de las aspiraciones de la CIM en este programa de liderazgo de las mujeres. La aspiración histórica de las mujeres es estar en el mundo de lo público, que nuestro trabajo sea remunerado y que tenga un reconocimiento. COVID ha puesto en evidencia una profundización de las brechas existentes para el logro de este objetivo. Estas brechas existentes ahora dan cuenta de que podríamos tener un rezago de más de 2 décadas en el mundo laboral, que el cierre de brechas que se previó que podía tardar 100 años en cerrarse, ahora se habla de 135 años para cerrar la brecha entre los hombres y las mujeres. Entonces nuestro objetivo es que miren el derecho de las mujeres al empoderamiento económico, que el statement "quédate en casa", que es un viejo conocido del patriarcado, no sea que nos quedemos en casa siempre, y que entendamos que la inserción de la mitad de la población, de este talento humano que tiene una serie de ventajas competitivas, es necesario para el crecimiento económico. De manera que la CIM está colocando esta realidad, está colocando las necesidades de las mujeres y está haciendo unas recomendaciones de rutas para poder cumplir con el derecho al empoderamiento económico y con el crecimiento económico que requieren nuestras empobrecidas economías en tiempos de COVID.
Español. Muy bien.
Perfecto, español.
Ok. Segunda consola, Rosy, buenos días.
more than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to all member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, and 3. Expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, the Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices, guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Row Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Centers program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. A new network of Caribbean SPDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the CTOUR, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SETI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to address the region's structural weaknesses, to recover from the health, economic, and social crises occasioned by the pandemic and prepare for future shocks. It is imperative that we work together as we risk losing recent development gains and seeing millions fall back into poverty. It is time for the region to redirect course and pursue a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all. We are in this together.
But the resilience building agenda is too big for any one stakeholder to address acting alone, and simply bringing together stakeholders, whether at the national, subnational, regional, or global level, is not enough. Effective, focused, and sustained coordination among stakeholders is paramount to provide countries with integrated and comprehensive support.
The OAS, as a hemispheric forum and honest broker, must continue to facilitate this process while we work with member states towards the attainment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together. The future of our region depends on it.
Bueno, la CIM tiene una agenda enorme en el tema de democracia y de liderazgos. El primer ámbito tiene que ver con la gobernanza electoral, para que esta gobernanza electoral responda a las necesidades con las que fue creada, y es buscar los espacios de redistribución del poder. Después hay un programa interamericano sobre el liderazgo de las mujeres, donde generamos conocimiento y también tenemos cursos de capacitación. Hay un poderoso curso que ha llegado a más de 1000 mujeres con más de 15 ediciones, que es para candidatas electorales, en las cuales conversamos con ellas, pero también nos ponemos en una agenda de solidaridad y articulación y alianzas entre las mujeres, a pesar de las múltiples diferencias ideológicas o de partidos políticos. También hablamos de los temas de violencia política, porque no es lo mismo llegar que quedarse, y la violencia política es una forma de ejercicio de disciplinar a las mujeres para que vuelvan al mundo de lo privado y enfrentar la violencia, hacer buenas investigaciones, buenas leyes que permitan sancionar la violencia política. Es parte de las aspiraciones de la CIM en este programa de liderazgo de las mujeres. La aspiración histórica de las mujeres es estar en el mundo del público, que nuestro trabajo sea remunerado y que tenga un reconocimiento. COVID ha puesto en evidencia una profundización de las brechas existentes para el logro de este objetivo. Estas brechas existentes ahora dan cuenta de que podríamos tener un rezago de más de 2 décadas en el mundo laboral. Que el cierre de brechas, que se previó que podía tardar 100 años en cerrarse, ahora se habla de 100.
Bom dia. Após a verificação do quórum pela secretaria.
Good morning. After confirming the necessary quorum from the Secretariat, I welcome you to this meeting of the Permanent Council, where we will discuss the reaffirmation of mandates and the establishment of a mandate management mechanism. CPOD 2546-25, available under Article 43 of the agreement, and I submit it for your consideration. That's the only point on the order of business. Seeing no objections to the order of business, it's so approved. I'd also like to congratulate Laura Gil and for her election as Assistant Secretary General-elect. This is a great step forward for the organization, and it's a clear sign that she does what she says she's going to do. Many thanks as well to Luan Gilchrist, the Chair of the Permanent Council, for her commitment and support of this meeting. It's an honor to be here. I'd also like to greet my dear friend, the representative from Colombia, Ambassador Luis Ernesto Vargas, who is also the co-chair of CD, and who will also assist me in leading this meeting. Mr. Vargas, please. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. We're happy to hear the words of congratulations for Laura Gil, Ambassador Laura Gil, as Secretary General-elect of the organization. This is an honor to co-chair this joint session called with the goal of considering a draft resolution that is titled Reaffirmation of Mandates and the Establishment of a Mandate Management Mechanism. From CD, we wish to express our special thanks to the delegation of Brazil, who's currently the chair of the Permanent Council, Ambassador Beno Belli, for his commitment to this process. And we also thank all delegations who actively participated in building a consensus-based document on a topic that is so pertinent to both the present and the future of our organization. I'd like to particularly mention the very valuable management efforts and the contributions from Antigua and Barbuda and Mexico. They contributed significantly to bringing together consensus and creating the text that brings us together today. And I'd like to then turn the floor back over to Ambassador Beno Belli for the consideration of the draft resolution that was just mentioned. You have the floor, sir. Thank you, Ambassador. I'd like to consult with delegations. Can we show our agreement with this text for reaffirming mandates and the establishment of a mandate management system agreed upon on April 29th with agreement from both bodies and open participation to all? You'll see this in CPOD 2060-92-25 Rev 1, and as you know, this is from the 55th regular period of sessions of the General Assembly. It is so agreed. Thank you. The floor is open to any who might wish to make comments. Argentina, you have the floor. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, dear colleagues. I'd also like to congratulate my dear friend, Ambassador from Colombia, for the nomination of Laura Gil as Assistant Secretary General. And I'd also like to congratulate the delegations because for me, this has been the first experience of really achieving consensus since I arrived. And I believe that it sends a good message. It reflects our ability to reach wide agreements when we have a shared goal of strengthening our organization. And in that vein, we reaffirm the importance of welcoming the new administration and giving them this space that they need to get their feet under them without overburdening them with new initiatives. I also believe that their call to attention of reevaluating our strategic priorities and those that we want to prioritize, including mandates that often don't have the required financing and that affects the sustainability of these initiatives. We should also commit ourselves to continue working to improve the efficiency and the use of resources within the organization from a perspective of austerity and fiscal responsibility, and without doubling efforts, and also promoting transparency and accountability. We hope that these criteria will also allow us to reach wide agreements that follow the agreed upon budget. And I'd like to there recognize the work of the chair from Brazil, because undoubtedly we need this kind of leadership to sit at a table and facilitate these parallel dialogues, the ones that bring us these texts and consensus. And thank you to Mexico and Antigua and Barbuda, who were also so key in making the text more rich. Thank you. Thank you. Argentina. Peru, you have the floor. Good morning. Peru is grateful for the efforts made by member states to reaffirm the pending mandates and establish a mechanism to manage mandates. Particularly, we want to declare that no precepts of this current draft resolution should be understood as not being completed for those that were approved in the Asunción General Assembly in 2025 and are still not approved by the Permanent Council, together with those turned over to the court through AG Resolution 30/28/24. Through those mandates, we've requested the elaboration of an analysis of the use of Article 12 of the Convention, the American Convention on Human Rights, freedom of expression of religion, so that we could understand better in what way member states protect those foundational rights of our populations. The analysis carried out did not follow the mandate as discussed by the General Assembly, as discussed by several member states in Peru. And so it should be clear that those mandates are still pending. They have not been fulfilled. Thank you. I don't see any further requests for the floor, so the chair of the Permanent Council thanks the active participation of each of you in regards to the draft resolution that we just agreed upon, that was agreed within CD and the Permanent Council, and CD will now proceed to present it in Antigua and Barbuda for the next General Assembly, and that will affect our work plan, the text, our action plans, and the declarations that have already been negotiated, as well as other high-level projects. We are here talking about high-level meetings. Ambassador Vargas, Chair of CD, thank you very much, and thank you to each of you who have participated. And shortly, we will begin the regular session of the Permanent Council, and I ask that you don't leave your seats. This session is adjourned. Thank you.
Bom dia, novamente. Após a verificação do quórum pela secretaria, tem a
Good morning. After confirming that we have the necessary quorum via the Secretariat, I have the honor of calling to order this meeting of the Permanent Council. We have the reference document, and in following with the rules of procedure, I would like to present it for the approval of the room. Seeing no objections, the document is approved. And without further ado, I would like to, on behalf of the Permanent Council, express my most sincere condolences on behalf of each of you. My grief for Ambassador Lino Gutierrez, who was a tireless supporter of the organization from his country of origin. I would also like to congratulate Canada for its celebration on April 28th of its national holiday, and we congratulate Mr. Carney for his election. Trinidad and Tobago, congratulations for the general elections that were carried out in your country, and to the Prime Minister Bassad for as head of government of Trinidad and Tobago. And according to Article 46, and at the request of Bolivia, I ask if the Permanent Council has consensus to approve the inclusion of words from the representative from Bolivia on item 3 of the order of business, and a time of up to 7 minutes to the delegate of Ecuador who would like to speak on item 7. Seeing no objections, it is so agreed. And so now we will move on to point 2 of the agenda, which is the recommendation of the General Commission on technical alternatives for the implementation of Article 46 of the Permanent Council's Rules of Procedure in keeping with Resolution AG Res 1 LVE 24 6094 25. This is presented for your consideration and was agreed upon on April 30th in the General Commission. I remind you that that was the moment in which the CAP accepted the recommendation from the working group. The document was CP Inf 10-540-25, and as an accompaniment, the General Secretariat presented to the General Commission technical alternatives for implementing Article 46 of the rules of the Permanent Council. And through consensus, we agreed on the following: to instruct that CAP use electronic voting systems that are already installed and available for roll call votes. Second, instruct the CAP to continue exploring whether it would be advisable to use the electronic voting system for secret ballots as well. 3, start using the technical solution that can automatically turn off microphones with a view to implementing Article 46 of the Rules of Procedure. In line of those recommendations, what we're aiming for is making progress in modernizing this body and other mechanisms for deliberation and decision-making between our countries and in the organization, that is. Seeing no objections, it is so decided. Approved. And they turned my mic off automatically. You'll have seen it works already. But here, I have it. And I just wanted to say that as soon as it's automatically turned off, I'd like to know if the room would allow for 30 seconds of buffer to speakers once they have reached their maximum time allotted as established by the Permanent Council's rules. That is so that we can make sure to achieve respect and order in remarks and without breaking the rules of procedure in place once everyone has had a chance to speak in the deliberations. I believe that everyone is in agreement, and I see no objection, so it is so approved. Thank you.
A Secretaria informou agora a presidência.
The Secretariat has informed us, or myself at this point, that speakers who will give remarks on this item 3, homage to Pope Francis, have not been established. We still don't have that list, and as a result, we are going to move on to point 4 if you are in agreement, and we will return to point 3 as soon as possible. If you agree, okay, we'll move on to point 4. Here we are speaking about the celebration of the Declaration of Independence of the United States. I don't know if the United States is ready to give its remarks. The United States is not listening, then we will move on to the next point without further ado. Okay, United States to present its draft resolution celebrating the semi-quincentennial of the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America, CP Doc 609025. United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleagues. The United States is pleased to present for your consideration as a draft and subject to ongoing consultations, a proposed resolution entitled Celebration of the Semi-Quincentennial of the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America. We offer this text in a spirit of transparency and collaboration with the hope that it may be favorably considered for adoption at the June 2025 General Assembly in Antigua and Barbuda. We also thank the Permanent Mission of Panama for its leadership in advancing a parallel resolution on the bicentennial of the Amphitronic Congress of Panama and see these initiatives as complementary. Together, they mark two historic milestones that speak to our shared hemispheric pursuit of liberty, unity, and self-government. Mr. Chair, in 2026, the United States will commemorate the 250th years since the signing of the Declaration of Independence, a founding document that launched the first modern republic of the Americas and articulated universal principles that have since inspired countless struggles for freedom across our hemisphere. It is especially meaningful that we bring this resolution forward today, just days after April 19th, the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Lexington and Concord in 1775. The ongoing engagements of the American Revolutionary War, it was there that ordinary citizens standing on their town greens fired the shot heard around the world. Their stand of liberty marked the beginning of a struggle whose ideals would reverberate far beyond the borders of the original 13 colonies. The ideals of 1776 were not confirmed to North America. From Caracas to Buenos Aires, from Santiago to Port-au-Prince, revolutionary leaders drew moral and political strength from the U.S. example. Among them, Simón Bolívar envisioned a united hemisphere of sovereign republics. José de San Martín hailed the United States as a sister republic, and Francisco de Miranda visited Washington, Jefferson, and Hamilton in pursuit of democratic reforms across Latin America. George Washington was not simply a national figure. He became a continental symbol of leadership. Decades after his time in Barbados as a young man, Bolívar referred to Washington as the only man who has ever surpassed the greatest of reputations. His bust is not only in our hall of herons and heroes above us, but in the collective memory of a hemisphere shaped by shared struggles for freedom. And consider Alexander Hamilton, a founding father of the United States, architect of its financial system, and principal of the Federalist Papers. Born in Neves, raised in the Caribbean, Hamilton's life is a testament to the deeply inter-American character of the revolutionary movement. That the upcoming General Assembly will take place in Antigua and Barbuda, so near his birthplace, offers a powerful symbolic link between the American founding and the Caribbean's enduring role in shaping hemispheric cooperation. Haitians too play a key role in the American Revolution. Through the Chasseurs Volontaires de Saint-Domingue, a regime of free men of color from present-day Haiti who fought alongside American and French forces at the siege of Savannah. Mr. Chair, this organization has stood with the United States in the past during key moments of national reflection. In 1974, the General Assembly convened in Atlanta, Georgia, its first meeting outside of Washington, and adopted a resolution commemorating the U.S. bicentennial. That action helped inspire the founding of the Art Museum of the Americas, which remains a platform for regional cultural diplomacy to this day. We hope this proposed semi-quinquennial resolution will follow in that tradition. It is not intended as a unilateral celebration, but as an invitation for the entire inter-American community to reflect together on the shared Republican values that bind our histories and guide our futures. The draft recalls the OAS 1976 role in marking the bicentennial, encourages commemorative activities and cultural programming through the OAS and the Art Museum, proposes a symbolic act of remembrance to reaffirm hemispheric friendship, and invites civil society and youth to participate in ways that reflect our region's various experiences with democracy, independence, and civic engagement. We welcome feedback and stand ready to consult with any delegation that wishes to refine, co-sponsor, or contribute to the process between now and the June 2025 General Assembly. Mr. Chair, as we reflect on 250 years of the American Republic, we do so not in isolation, but in the appreciation of the Pan-American tradition of which we are part.
Muito obrigado à delegação dos Estados Unidos.
Many thanks, United States. And your mic was turned off because you went over the time established. I'm very sorry for that, but I'm sure that your message was heard and received, so thank you. Without further ado, I will offer the floor to any delegates who wish to take the floor regarding this draft resolution that we heard from the United States. Canada, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Chair.
Soulignera à la fois le 250e anniversaire d'indépendance des États-Unis et les 200 ans depuis la tenue.
And those 200 shared years of history that was celebrated in Panama.
Inter-American aspirations that continue to shape our hemispheric dialogue towards an ever more peaceful, democratic, and prosperous future. These commemorations offer activities that give us an opportunity to have collective reflections on independence, regional solidarity, democracy, and the evolution of human rights. We value activities aiming to promote mutual understanding, cultural exchange, and reflection on our history as we seek deeper understanding and appreciation of our different experiences that continue to shape our inter-American identity. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegação do
Paraguay, you have the floor. Thank you. We appreciate this draft resolution to commemorate the 250 years of independence for the United States. This is a historic step with importance for the region because it was an inspiration for other emancipatory movements throughout Latin America at the beginning of the century, commemorating the independence of the United States and its values such as liberty and fraternity and self-governance based on popular vote is more important than ever. And that is why we believe is important to, on such a complex international stage as the current one, that we take advantage of this chance to reaffirm our commitment to the values and causes of cooperation and inter-American fraternity. We believe that with this draft resolution, we will continue with the very important tradition of accompanying these commemorative events of historic importance that have marked the history of our Americas. And so we wish to support the proposed draft resolution in the next General Assembly, which will take place in Antigua and Barbuda. Thank you very much.
Passo a palavra à delegação da Argentina, embaixador.
Thank you. Ambassador from Argentina, you have the floor. Thank you. I will be brief. I was pleased to hear the remarks from the United States and how they included one of our leaders, Jose San Martin. I think that when you look at the history of my country, it's impossible to imagine its formation of the nation, the national constitution, with its division of powers, which to some extent reflect the institutional pillars of our democracy. This is the longest standing democracy in our region, and we have celebrated 42 years this year, and they were fundamental pillars to other independence movements such as that in France. And so I think that with that history, we need to pay tribute to it, we need to honor it, and we have to practice it actively every day. I'd also like, as my esteemed colleague from Paraguay said, we'd also like to support this draft resolution. And of course, we hope that those values continue to be the pillars of this organization and all countries defending democracy, liberty, equality before the law, and fraternity. Thank you. Haiti, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like, on behalf of the Haitian delegation, to support the draft resolution proposed by the delegate from the United States regarding the United States independence 250 years ago. I would like to highlight, Mr. Chair, if you would allow, that there are a number of revolutions that mark modern history. The American Revolution is undoubtedly one of them, and we are increasingly, we would like to support this resolution to such an extent and recognize that Haiti and the United States have much in common. These are two revolutions, if you'll allow, that have most marked modern history and political modernity through human rights, democracy, and the history of the Americas writ large, because these two revolutions represent all these foundational values for the region. And so on behalf of the Haitian delegation, we strongly support this draft resolution to commemorate the anniversary. It would be a commemoration of democracy, we hope, and human rights, and also a commemoration of fraternity between the peoples of the region. Thank you.
Passo a palavra à delegação de El Salvador.
I'd like to give the floor to El Salvador, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My delegation truly appreciates the OAS for the presentation of this draft resolution, which tells which our institutional debates for the entire hemisphere and the grandeur thereof. We go along with it, and we co-sponsor it. Thank you very much. Peru has the floor. Mr. Chairman, Peru commends the initiative of celebrating the 150 years of the United States of America. 250 years, that is to say. The United States of America represents a point of inspiring reference for all democracies of the entire world, including that of Peru. The Constitution of the United States of America is the Constitution which is the oldest one of the planet, thanks to the sagacity and the understanding of human nature which inspired it. The strength of its political institutions have unleashed an most dynamic economic process that hitherto was unknown in the world. We thus share the objective of this draft resolution. Thank you very much. As there are no further requests for the floor, the chair would like to suggest that the Permanent Council take due note of the presentation of the delegation of the United States. And we would like to invite you, all other member states, to put questions for embracing this draft resolution. No objections, so agreed. Now we can go back to item 3, which had been put in abeyance so that we can go back to our order of business on this agenda. The next item on the agenda, and on behalf of Bolivia and at the request of Bolivia, and on behalf of the delegates of Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Mexico, Paraguay, Peru, and Uruguay, members of the Group of 10, with the co-sponsorship of the delegations of the Dominican Republic and Costa Rica, it is up to this council to provide or pay tribute to His Holiness Pope Francis in his capacity as head of the Vatican State. This tribute is a recognition of the spiritual, ethical, and humanitarian legacy of Pope Francis, whose voice has been an inspiring guide in promoting dialogue, peace, human rights, social justice, and care for the environment. His commitment with universal values and their constant appeal, or his constant appeal, to fraternity and solidarity between peoples resonate deeply in our region and the entire world. We recognize also, with great appreciation of the present in the room, Mr. Teseo Bergoglio, nephew of His Holiness Pope Francis. On behalf of this council, we would like to address to him and greet him very warmly, accompanied by our most sincere feelings of condolences. To begin this tribute, I have the honor to greet and first give the floor to Rabbi Ibrahim Skorka, Rector Emeritus of Latin American Rabbinic Seminars. Rabbinic Skorka, welcome. Please be welcome. You have the floor. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for having invited me to commemorate the personality of Pope Francis, someone who was very dear to my heart and with whom we had a deep friendship. For only things that God knows, these circumstances of the like crossed the path of my existence with Mr. Bergoglio. He will be Pope Francis as we know him. He understood that dialogue that brought us together should be held, opening up our hearts with empathy, or as he used to say, putting ourselves in the shoes of the other, a dialogue with all due respect, but in which nothing is hidden, and in which each one should be courageously spiritual to deal with the most difficult issues that trouble us as well as our neighbors. When we decide to look at a text for some of our dialogues, Bergoglio said, there are a lot of conflictual topics. Speak to the people who are most interested in them. It's more than just knowing about them. That's why we talk about our closest to God, the celibacy, the pedophilia. These are some of the issues. And we have to look at the piety during the Shoah and the drama of the displaced people in Argentina, the Palestine-Israeli conflict, and the future of religions. Bergoglio fulfilled everything that he said. When we analyze the piety and his attitude in the Shoah, which is very complex, he said that we have to open up the archives of time and look for the truth in them. The 2nd of March 2020, the archives were opened so that the experts could immerse themselves in them, and it was always said that we should know the truth. That is the only way to build a path for improving the human condition. He said that truth should not be the point of reference. It should open up and come out of its robes, should be with everybody, agnostics, sinners, and everybody. And he gave the example of all of that. He didn't live in the apostolic castle, so he could live elsewhere, where he had a lot of personal talks, non-official talks with everybody who needed his advice, his help, or simply just to be with his loyal friends. The ritual of the washing of the feet before Easter, he did with people who were believers, with people in jail, be they Catholics or any other religion. He affirmed the importance of interreligious, intercultural dialogue, which he showcased by visiting many countries, even those that had non-Catholic majorities. He created links with religious leaders of all faiths. And in the 8th chapter of his autobiography, which he called Hope, he said, the culture of encounters is not just for us to be giving to others, but we should also receive from them. And he invites us to get out of our own silo so that we can be pilgrims. We have to come together with people. We have to walk together. We have to move away and get closer to those with whom we don't believe, but we have to get closer to the fires of life so it will be easier to overcome differences. The Brazilian Vinicius de Moraes said, life, my friend, is the art of encounters, although there are so many points of non-encounter. And Bergoglio said, to get closer to others really means to not be afraid of getting into the darkness of night, end of quote. He said that life is a dynamic process, that we cannot merely repeat what was done in the past, but rather be inspired with the positive that guides history. And we have to continue to work towards crafting a new path. 12:1 of Genesis, he was used to saying, where God described order to Abraham, and we have to make our own path. In the same chapter 8 of his own autobiography, we also read something with regard to this point. Some time ago, said, I found Gustav Mahler's quote, a major director and composer of the orchestra Tardo Romantico, that I really liked. Talking about the traditions, he wrote, tradition is not the adoration of ashes, but rather the preservation of the fire. The tradition, he he continued to say, is not a museum and the guarantee of the future. The idea of constantly going back to the ashes is the nostalgia of those who surround it. But this should not be the true feeling of the word. Tradition is an undeniable seed for the tree to continue bearing fruit. We have to recreate the message of justice, misery, and humility in the heart of the church and generically share its values with all of mankind. It's not a question of converting people from other religions to Christianism, but rather to build a universal culture in which each and every one in their own beliefs will contribute to building the world upheld by those aforementioned values. In analyzing his political actions, oftentimes, which were so criticized, we have to bear in mind that only part of them were revealed, whilst other things were happening to curb conflicts which hurt the world, that he defined as a chapter of the Third World War underway. His actions as head of the Catholic Church should be understood not only as a just reaction in circumstantial contexts, but rather also as conciliatory messages for the future. I began my words in this tribute here in the Organization of American States to his memory, mentioning the privilege that God gave me to share a true friendship with Pope Francis. In chapter 19 of his autobiography, he mentions our friendship, saying, today we had 30 television programs recorded on the Bible, which were part of the Archdiocese. And then in the first days of February 2013, we bid farewell because summer vacation began and we weren't there for the March recording, the topic of which should precisely be friendship. But the spirit goes before everything, and there are well thought out situations. And this last program was never recorded because this March did not see him go back to the Archdiocese. But Abraham was one of those people that I called by telephone the same night when I was elected. Thank you very much, Rabbi, but your time is up. And we adopted the regulation to automatically shut down the microphone once the time is over. We just took this decision and we can't go back on that. We can't walk that back. So I truly appreciate your presence and your contribution and your very important witness that will be certainly part of the minutes of this permanent council, with the possibility, of course, of circulating your full speech to all delegates interested. Next, I should like to greet and give the floor to Imam Mahfouz Gil, President of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community of Argentina. Imam, please be welcome. You have the floor. Assalamu alaikum. Peace and God's blessings with all of you. Pray for me. Pray for me. These are the famous words of Pope Francis that we've heard in the last few days, and he said the same thing when we visited him in December the last time, when His Excellency Luis Almagro was there to hand over our book, Shalom, peace is the way forward. His last words were, pray for me. According to Islam, to pray for a person or for a deceased person is the best way to keep his memory alive. And that's why when we say goodbye to somebody, we say, may God reign. We came from God and we shall return to God. On the other hand, Islam teaches us that to keep the memory alive of a person, you have to continue to follow his teachings, his virtues, his actions, and his work that have begun and that have spurred us on. So, as a Muslim, I'm very grateful to Pope Francis for his commitment to peace and the holiness of life. And when I talk about the holiness of life or the sanctity of life, I say that without any distinction of ethnicity, religion, or color. Pope Francis represented for us a figure who spoke coherently, very powerfully, and very strongly when he criticized each armed conflict and war without any exception. It's not by chance for me that in his last public appearance, once again, he implored for there to be peace, and he implored to end all of these wars and to put weapons down. And he proscribed suffering in Gaza and in the Middle East. And a world war, in his words, he used to say, we should be shred. But I should like to underscore, and I am a Muslim, and in Italian, we are all brothers. And in his work, he invites us to universal fraternity and to meet the other in any sense, in any cultural sense, to have a dialogue. And what I should like to most emphasize of Pope Francis, that his words were seen in his symbolic gestures, his action, which were definitive. And let us remember, he was the first pope in the history to visit the Arabian Peninsula, where he signed a very important document that afterwards was adopted by the United Nations, and it is looked and upheld every 4th of February, Day of Fraternity and Universality. And then 4 times he also received our delegation, Ahmadiyya, and the Vatican with great grace and kindness. And at that time, he exchanged prayers and kindness with the Khalifa, Maliya Sur Ahmed. And that is why the spiritual leader, His Holiness, expressed his condolences along the following lines. I am deeply saddened with the passing of His Holiness Pope Francis. Over the course of his life, he sought to serve the vulnerable, the poor, showing great compassion for those who were under the yoke of war, persecution, and injustice. He was the name of humility, faith, and humanity, and he sought to build bridges between people of different religions and beliefs. During his pontificate, Pope Francis received very graciously and with great warmth Mr. Ahmadiyya and the Vatican, and we will always be grateful because of that. On behalf of Ahmadiyya, we would like to express our deepest condolences to the Catholic Church and its members throughout the entire world. And so, to sum up then, we, through Ahmadiyya, and with our motto, hate for no one and war for everyone, we truly embrace Pope Francis and his message for us to be all brothers. We believe, and this is a principle which is sacred in chapter 3, verse 65, where all Muslims are ordained, and we invite Jews, Christians, and followers of any religion to come together and look for the values we share in common. And instead of building walls, to emphasize getting together and building bridges. And instead of competing, sharing, instead of arguing, dialogue, and instead of prejudging, know your other brother. So it is my deepest desire that we, as sectors, be it academic, political, or otherwise, let us continue to be brothers together with this vision and with this deep-seated desire to create a more humane, more fraternal, more harmonious humankind. Thank you very much, Imam, for your comments. Now, I should like to give the floor to those delegations who might like to make comments. Let me give the floor to the delegation of Bolivia. Ambassador, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The plurinational state of Bolivia truly appreciates your chairmanship for including this fraternal topic on the agenda today, and truly appreciates the regional Group 10, for having proposed this at the suggestion of Bolivia. Jorge Mario Bergoglio was born in Buenos Aires in 1936. He was the child of children who fled fascism, and his mother was a woman dedicated to the education of her life. And for brothers, those who grew in a family of many, they understood early on the importance of living together, sharing, and in giving. He said this so many times when he spoke about generosity and fratelli tutti, love for all. He lived with his brothers and parents in a modest house in the capital of Argentina. He studied in the secondary school, and he had a diploma in chemistry. He loved football or soccer, and he played it all of his life. He went into the seminar in the Company of Jesus, the Jesuits, in 58. From 67 to 1970, he studied theology, getting a new diploma. He was ordained as a priest in 69. Next year, he went to Spain, and this was the third approval in the Company of Jesus in Querari. At 36, Bergoglio made his solemn promise for faith. 73, he was elected in Argentina, and he played that role for many years. He spearheaded, or when there was a coup in Argentina, he had a controversial strategy to escape and save many people who were perceived, or persecuted, I should say, by the regime. He started independent research and not only established the innocence, his innocence, but he created bridges for those who were persecuted, and people like Mr. Esquivel and Mr. Oliveira, through whom he established their innocence. The pontificate opened up the Vatican when there was a dictatorship, looking at this humanity and crimes of humanity, and thus earned the trust of his followers. In 1992, Paul II named him bishop, and then he was Archbishop of Argentina after the death of Cardinal Queracino. In 2001, he was named Cardinal by Pope Paul II, and then on the night of the 13th of March 2013, he was elected as the Bishop of Rome and the Pontificate of the Catholic Church. He had a brilliant career without ever relinquishing his principles and values, and an austere life in Latin America and in the entire world. His personality went towards the defense of the marginalized of society, the dispossessed, and that made him even more popular. His message of hope dealt with exclusion of those who were separated. He said to not exclude them from church, and he advocated for greater participation of women, and he said that to masculinize the church was a sin. He talked about savage capitalism, said it was a crime. Homosexuality and accepting it, something was inconceivable until his mandate. He defended migrants. He defended equality for all human beings. And he compared segregationist policies as something from the Second World War. He was very firm when it came to the defense of peace in the face of war. He defended very firmly rights of women at a time that gender equality was just coming about. He was alongside with indigenous people. We saw this in his visits to Mexico. And with Christian humility, he went against the abuses of Native people, and his defense of the environment, of Mother Nature, and relationship of human beings with nature were recorded in the encyclical of 2015, which underscores a major stride for human beings and living together with our Mother Nature. In the Holy See, he underscored the Vatican and its values, and because of his apostolic view, his work went into force, and he led significant changes in the administration of the Vatican, which was centralized and very rigid and oftentimes very dark. A year after, he promulgated a new law which was crucial for Vatican City, inspired in the reforms from his pontificate, and he opened up a renewed missionary approach for the church to deal with the current realities. This new law established a more strict framework for the state, and with these reforms, the Pope affirmed his power and looked at autonomy and particularly transparency in state functions. Pope Francis is and has been a change agent, controversial although, and he left a deep-seated mark that goes way beyond church. Given social justice, these were cornerstones of his mandate, although there were many stumbling blocks along the way. But to humanize Christianity, he is consolidating one of the most relevant and influential people of the century for all of mankind. Now, perhaps, Mr. Chairman, his biggest legacy was to give an example as to the biggest values that we have for all humankind, contradicting hate speech, evilness, which is so common in our time. And human beings, we have the extraordinary capacity to develop deep-seated feelings of compassion, love, protection, generosity, understanding, loyalty, and above everything else, we have the ability to understand and live and even suffer for other human beings. Pope Francis was the biggest voice for these things in modern times, and that's why he should be remembered as an exemplary man that knew how to inspire religious, social, academic, political people, and the entire world, as we see here with these brilliant presentations that we've had thus far this morning, Mr. Chairman. But he knew how to inspire people themselves in the entire world. He was always very close to them. So at the final analysis, Pope Francis left humankind a message that all human beings can and should understand each other. We should value each other, and we should want and embrace each other as we are in this life. And therein lies the greatness of his legacy for the nations of the world. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Passo a palavra à delegação.
Delegation of Argentina has the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I truly appreciate and thank the group of 10 for placing this item on the agenda today. It's a privilege to have heard my dear rabbi friend Abraham Skorka and Imam Marwanji, who represent the ecumenical spirit that Pope Francis promoted. But before I begin with my own message, and considering that Rabbi was ending his own comments, obviously he went over the time, but I would like to ask you, and I would like to ask your permission to end with his words, which obviously restrict my own speaking time, and I accept that because those are the rules of the game, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, if you allow me, and considering that this is the message which, in my opinion, embodies the dialogue that he had with Pope Francis, and I think that I can take on these words as if they were my own, and I don't necessarily have to refer to anything else. I would like to put this to the consideration of the Permanent Council, because we already decided that there are talk limits, and now is the time for member states. It's not the time for our speakers to speak. That time is past. But if you like, I could put this before everyone for consideration. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any problem in submitting this for the consultation of my colleagues. I can also take on this speech and say that it's my own. So we don't really have to consult colleagues. No, I'm going to consult. I'm going to ask colleagues. I don't want this to establish a precedent, because we are ordering the work of the Council, and we have to respect what we've already decided on. So now we're in the discussion amongst member states, and so it's time for member states to speak, and we're going to open up an exception because this is a tribute paid to Pope Francis. But I would like to ask delegations to continue to follow the rules that we have established in the rules of procedure and that have been agreed by everyone. Point of order from Canada.
Order, but I would only say I would second the motion if that was appropriate.
Ok. Se todos estiverem de acordo,
if everyone agrees, then we will give 2 additional minutes or 3 additional minutes to our speaker, and so it shall be. Rabbi, you can conclude with your 3 minutes now. I just need 1 minute, that's all. Yes, I was mentioning that he defined our friendship and what brought us together. And it was precisely to serve men in the most sublime way, the highest way to serve God. Certainly, the concern that we shared was to serve all humankind, to convey this attitude, because this is the way that we understood we would serve God. Francis was simple, humble. He left aside selfishness, egoism. He was a simple man. He embraced all the suffering. He was concerned with refugees. He fought against discrimination and violence of all kinds. His message, recorded in all of his actions, left a universal legacy which we hope will blossom and continue to develop in the future, so that we can shed more light on a humankind that is much more enlightened. Thank you very much for your consideration. Panama has the floor.
Apologies. Argentina is requesting the floor again. And then just one clarification, Mr. Chair. I am very disciplined, and as a result, I'd like to say that this should not create a precedent. And I'm the first to present the suggestion, and I apologize, but I think that the spiritual context in which we're speaking today and in this political climate, I think that there are occasions where we should have flexibility with time, but I don't want to create a precedent, and I do apologize. And I will also support all efforts for discipline in the future. As I mentioned, Pope Francis was a man who dressed as the Pope. He was the voice of the voiceless. And that's why it is such a sad day for my compatriots, but also for all of humanity. We are so grateful to the delegations for showing their solidarity. Pope Francis was not just a spiritual leader. He was also a light that shone through the humanity, and he defended the defenseless, particularly those who were often marginalized or forgotten, people who unborn, the elderly, people who suffered, women who were exploited through and children who suffered from mistreatment and trafficking. He fought for open thinking, which is so threatened, and he also championed the cause of martyrs throughout the world. He was a champion of the family. He maintained that family is the number one place where one learns about others, to open your heart, and the equal dignity of all without distinction based on race, sex, or circumstances. And we don't always see adequate attention paid to the family in our context. And Pope Francis said that we must look at each other as human beings, making a human fabric, and we must do away with prostitution, drug trafficking, arms trafficking, international organized crime, all of these scourges. He warned against throwing ourselves into a numbing effect in the face of all these challenges, and we must be stewards of his message. We are called to fight lethargy, fight for human dignity, and shed light on the darkest corners, and do away with our ambition and selfishness or other deformities of humanity. And on the international stage, he always looked for peace, dialogue to overcome the difficult situations faced by humanity. We must remember especially his acts in the face of dictatorship, where he maintained always that dialogue and peace were the way forward. Dictatorships would always end badly, sooner or later. And we can remember his last words in Urbi et Orbi, where he referred to religious freedom, where there is no religious freedom and freedom of thought and freedom of word or respect for other people's opinions, peace is not possible. Argentina proposes working along these lines within the General Assembly. Mr. Chair, to wrap up, each and every one of these affirmations from His Holiness Pope Francis should anchor our hearts in the fundamental rights of human rights and all of our work done in the organization. We wish to continue from Argentina working in firm commitment to those values, and we will maintain an active participation, promoting dialogues, building bridges along with our fellow colleagues in order to promote those values that he championed and put them into real practice. Many thanks, Mr. Chair, and I would like to repeat that I am firmly committed to the idea that this should not, my special request should not create a precedent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I will be clear here that the chair cannot do anything but adhere to the rules that you yourselves have adopted. So we will take into account, even in this session, the fact that following an agreed upon period, if you are all in agreement with extending it, then we can move forward, as stated by Bolivia and then supported by Ecuador. If there is such an exception in the future, please do make that request beforehand, because as you will understand, as much as I might like to make these calls, it's not my call to make. I have to adhere to the rules that you have approved. So, Panama, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an honor for me to address you in this solemn tribute to His Holiness Pope Francis, who was the head of state of the Vatican City. On behalf of the Republic of Panama, I wish to express my most sincere grief at the passing of this extraordinary figure who has left an indelible mark on our times. Our country is mourning the loss of someone who crossed barriers, built bridges amongst all nations and faiths. I'd like to begin by thanking you for the presentations that we heard from Rabbi Skorka, the Rector Emeritus of the Rabbinical Seminary of Latin America, who, with Pope Francis, has symbolized the bridge being built between different faiths, sincere dialogue, and how this can bring understanding. His testimony to the humanity of His Holiness shows us that great transformations come from personal, authentic relationships. And to Imam Marwal Gil, president of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community of Argentina, who showed us the efforts on the part of Pope Francis to build bridges in the world with the Islamic community. The words of the Imam have shown us the importance of finding shared values that bring us together as a human family. These presentations are vibrant examples of the unbreakable commitment of Pope Francis to interfaith dialogue, which is a value which we in Panama fully embrace. Mr. Chair, Panama had the extraordinary privilege to receive Pope Francis during the World Youth Day in January of 2019. And in those days that will be indelible in the heart of our country, the presence of His Holiness transformed our country into an epicenter of hope, where more than 700 young people from different regions and countries came together to celebrate faith and commitment to a better world. During his visit, Pope Francis honored us not just with his presence, but with a clear message that resonated profoundly with Panamanians. We are a bridge between continents, between oceans, and between cultures. He reminded us of our job as stewards and bridge builders in these fragmented times. His visit was made in an historic moment for our country, just a few years after the inauguration of the widening of the Panama Canal, which was a symbolic project that marks our country as a nexus in the world. And His Holiness established a parallel between that in engineering work and the spiritual work that all of us share. And that point that unites countries and oceans, we should also call for dialogues and meetings that bring us to understanding and support coming together. The pontificate of Pope Francis, Mr. Chair, was built on a constant call for bringing together, and that simple concept, but was rather revolutionary in its application, and it is resonant for this multilateral context that we so defend here. His Holiness has shown us that peace is not just the absence of conflicts, but the fruit of constant dialogues and recognition of the other's humanity and a search for common good. His 2 encyclicals represent a moral compass for our time, and they remind us that the challenges of the world require global solutions based on universal fraternity. As a nation committed to multilateral diplomacy and dialogue as a key tool to resolve conflicts, Panama finds in Pope Francis's words a valuable guide for foreign policy and his call on coming together. And to wrap up, I would like to just echo the words of thanks on behalf of Panama to Pope Francis for his work for peace, for reminding us constantly that we are all responsible for building a fairer and more fraternal world. Many thanks. Colombia, you have the floor. Ambassador. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Bolivia for having included this proposal to pay tribute to His Holiness Pope Francis, head of the Vatican City, and our spiritual head, whose voice transcended creeds and borders, and it left an indelible mark on humanity. I'd also like to thank the presentations made by Rabbi Skorka and Imam Marwan Gil. The Colombian people and its government, headed by President Petro and Vice President Mina, echo the words of tribute, reminding everyone that his government from the Vatican City was a light to follow for all. He transformed the institution in favor of peace, care for the environment, and love for others, as well as fraternity. And we are especially grateful for his visit in 2017, which was a gesture of closeness in a divisive moment for our recent history. And on that occasion, His Holiness left us an indelible message that continues to live in our hearts. The search for peace is an open work. It is a task that cannot be given up, and it must be the work of all. His words are still guiding us in Colombia, and his presence was an invaluable thrust towards conciliation on a national level. Today, the Colombian government reminds us of his words. Peace is not built with guns or weapons, but with justice, dialogue, compassion, and truth. This profound vision resonates in the heart of our history, and it will continue to inspire each generation of our country that works to peace, and we hope that we can continue to see that work in the future. Pope Francis was also a tireless defender of life, of the planet, and of those who have been marginalized because of exclusionary systems, such as the encyclicals that have already been mentioned, Fraterni Tutti. These are guides for humanity that requires to have a new relationship between humans and the environment, guided by fraternity, equity, and solidarity. As our president Petro has expressed, his encyclicals will be part of history if we are capable of creating humanity that defends its greatest good, life. And that was a quote. And that is why we are paying tribute to a pope who knew how to show spiritual leadership in the 21st century. He was a man who confronted with peace and faith and bravery the greatest crises of our time with a profoundly human and universal perspective. To conclude, Colombia expresses its solidarity with the Catholic Church, with the millions of people who are mourning the loss of Pope Francis. The legacy of Pope Francis will live on in each gesture of conciliation, social justice, or in defense of our shared home, in the building of paths towards peace. His legacy will remain in the hearts of humanity because his example inspired and transformed the lives of so many. In Colombia, we will never forget his message. We cannot forget happiness or lose hope. And in order to achieve peace, we must open our hearts, leave behind hate, and build a culture of brotherly gathering. Thank you, Your Holiness. Thank you for reminding us that another humanity is possible, one free of hate and living in peace. Many thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Barbados, you have the floor. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, the Permanent Mission of Barbados has the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the Caribbean Community CARICOM group of states, who today join the hemispheric community in paying homage to Pope Francis as head of the Vatican City. We know that he was born Jorge Mario Bergoglio on the 17th of December 1936 and ordained as a Jesuit priest on December the 13th, 1969. He, like St. Francis, the patron saint of the environment and animals, led a simple life. He took the oath of poverty on becoming head of the Catholic Church in Argentina. He won the hearts of many, and this he did by eschewing worldly goods and opulence associated with his predecessors. Elected Pope on the 13th of March, 2013 by the Conclave of Cardinals, he chose the name of the saint who had inspired him to do good and to live a life of poverty and simplicity. The Holy Father's life of simplicity was carried on in his new journey to the Vatican, and as spiritual leader of the 1.4 billion Catholics, he was in many ways seen as a revolutionary, prepared to tackle the difficult issues of our time and embracing all, Catholic and non-Catholic alike, without judgment. In his words, we are all God's children. He condemned injustices wherever he saw them and re-energized the church. As a missionary, he carried the message of the gospel across the globe, preaching to the millions. He challenged world leaders to create a more just and safe world for all. Even in poor health, he received the faithful, the lowly, and the powerful. Truly, he was a revolutionary leader who gave hope to the hopeless, love to the neglected, faith to the backsliders, compassion to the suffering, charity to the needy, respect to the lowly, and courage to the weak. Pope Francis's legacy is multifaceted, characterized by a focus of mercy, peace, and reform within the Catholic Church and its relationship with the world. As the Pope of the peripheries, he was often referred to. He reached out to the marginalized and advocated for social justice, climate action, and interfaith dialogue. Pope Francis had a significant impact on global society through his unique approach to leadership within the Catholic Church. His advocacy on global issues, including human rights and immigration, should serve as a lesson to world leaders. He challenged traditional norms, promoted dialogue, and emphasized the importance of caring for the poor and the marginalized. Seen by many as one of the great leaders of our lifetime, he left his mark. I myself, as a Catholic, a practicing Catholic, like many others, look forward to the day when he may be beatified as the first step towards the recognition of sainthood. Mr. Chair, I thank you.
Thank you. Chile, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our thanks to the speakers and for incorporating this item on the order of business. Chair, there's something that brings all humans together. Believers, non-believers from any country, any age, any generation. There's something that we all share. We make mistakes, Mr. Chair. But what has left an indelible mark on humanity in someone like Pope Francis is that his errors, his mistakes don't make him smaller. They propel him on to greater achievements. And so here I wanted to talk about the experience of a mistake. And that speaks to the greatness of Pope Francis, his flexibility, his self-reflection. In January of 2018, he visited Chile, and he had different activities. And the rabbi and the imam spoke to us about some of what he did. He saw a home for the poor. He went to a women's refuge. And then several thousand people gathered together in Manquehue, where they had the Eucharist, and they had a conversation about human rights. And that was a celebration of those who had suffered and lived, and who had lived with the weight of so many injustices. But, Mr. Chair, his visit was also marked by protests, because there was a bishop who had been accused of systematic abuses. And the visit ended, but then 4 months later, in May, the Pope published his reflections on the way in which he himself had responded to the voices of protest of those followers. I think here, he said, lives one of our biggest faults of omission, not knowing how to listen to victims. That is how partial stories are built, where crucial elements are missing, and so we don't have the whole story. And it is with embarrassment that I say that I was not able to act and respond in time and adequately. And so in the face of these protests and the letter, we saw the Pope sent Charles Echulina at Chile. He was a leader of the team to research or look into the alleged abuses. And they looked at the victims, they heard their stories, they looked at facts, and this was also a transformational factor in his pontificate. He recognized the suffering of victims in his letter, where he said, I saw the process of purification, of review, and this is thanks to the perseverance of people who, despite hopelessness or being discredited, fight for the truth. Victims of sexual abuse, abuses of power. I am with them. Victims of any faith, and I'd like to publicly thank the perseverance and the bravery of all of them. Mr. Chair, we think that in this tribute that has brought us together to celebrate Pope Francis's legacy, it would be useful to share this story where, through learning and recognizing that he had made a mistake, Pope Francis was able to, in his letter, publish his letter that in Chile has sown the seeds of never staying silent in the face of injustice. And with that brief story, Mr. Chair, I would like to echo the words of tribute to Pope Francis and the words of condolences for those who are mourning his loss. Many thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Canada, if you would like the floor again. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We appreciate the words of Rabbi Abraham Skorka and Imam Marwan Gil for their presentations today, their presence, their words, so sensible. And we are sensitive to this opportunity to render tribute to Pope Francis. As head of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis underlined the importance of dialogue in a world that was in constant flux, and he cried for progress in the face of urgent social, environmental challenges, for the rights of migrants, for human rights, LGBTQI+ rights.
Through his teachings and actions, Pope Francois redefined the moral responsibility of leadership in the 21st century. In his landmark encyclical Laudato Si, he gave voice to the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor, reminding us that ecological degradation and social injustice are deeply entwined and demand our shared urgent attention. In 2022, Pope Francis visited Canada. During his trip, he heard from survivors of Indigenous Catholic residential schools and their descendants. He heard from them directly about the system's legacy of searing and enduring pain. His visit and his acknowledgement were important steps towards justice, healing, and reconciliation for the victims of residential schools and their loved ones in Canada. My country continues to work with the Holy See to deliver on the commitments made during Pope Francis's visit towards Indigenous reconciliation. Canada salutes Pope Francis's efforts to promote unity between Catholics, non-Catholics, and non-Christians. As he rests in peace, we hope that his legacy of faith, peace, and compassion continues to have a lasting impact on all of us and on generations to come. May we honor his memory by continuing to work for a world that reflects solidarity, justice, and sustainability, all elements of his life that he so clearly espoused and led on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Passo a palavra à delegação.
The floor is open to Dominican Republic. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank those delegates who requested the inclusion of this important tribute on the agenda for today's permanent council meeting. Also, our thanks to Rabbi Skorka and Imam Gil for their reflections, the words they shared with us on the figure of Pope Francis. On behalf of the Dominican Republic, it is an honor to be part of this tribute to His Holiness Pope Francis, this human being who transcended barriers and borders and managed to build bridges, extend his hand as a tie amongst all of us, and that went beyond religion. For Latin America and for my country, Pope Francis was someone close to us. In him, we felt represented as a country of profound Christian values. He was one of ours, and in every moment he felt close to us. Even in one of his last messages, he expressed his expressions of consolation to those who had lost their lives in a tragedy. And his words to humanity will live on, and they will force us to continue reflecting, particularly for those countries represented here in this forum, where, for example, in his encyclica Laudato Si, he mentioned climate change and its effects throughout the world on all life, and he fought for education and ties between humans and the environment. And I quote, "We need a conversation that brings all of us together because the environmental challenge that we face and its human roots is of interest to all of us, and it impacts all of us." With 7 visits to Latin America, visiting 11 countries, His Holiness showed his interest in the region, its people, its communities, and today more than ever, his messages should be an inspiration to all of us in the work we do here. We should always work for the common good. Today, remember how every day he practiced diplomacy as a tool for peace and union through dialogue and inclusion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Passa a palavra.
Costa Rica, you have the floor. Mr. Chair of the Permanent Council, permanent representatives, Monsignor Juan Cruz Serrano, representative of the Holy See before the OAS, distinguished panelists, Mr. Skorka, Imam Gil, the family of Borgoglio, who is here with us present today. Good morning to each and every one of you. We are here to pay tribute to the memory of His Holiness Pope Francis, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, not just as head of state and head of a permanent observer mission to the OAS, but also as the first Pope of Latin American origin. Thanks to those excellent panelists who have joined us and honored us with their presence. His pontificate, marked by humility and a commitment to social justice, has left a clear and lasting mark on humanity. And I would like to share with you an anecdote that reflects the human quality. Don Federico Zamora had commented that every time he greeted Pope Francis, he'd greet him and say, Costa Rica, the best coffee in the world. That simple sentence, full of kindness, reflected not just the good taste of Pope Francis, but also the way in which he remembered and valued the people representing each community throughout the world and represented a closeness and an individual relationship with each of them. His Laudato Si, which called on all of us to take care of our shared home and to build a fairer, a world of more solidarity, particularly those who lived in conditions of greatest vulnerability, also reflected greater human dignity and universal fraternity. On behalf of the government of Costa Rica, we echo the words of sincere condolences, respect, and solidarity with the Holy See, particularly with Monsignor Juan Antonio Cruz Serrano, permanent observer of the Holy See to the OAS, and to the entire international community that today mourns the loss of this great leader who defended peace and social justice. May his legacy continue illuminating our path with a prayer, a hug, and a smile. Rest in peace. Many thanks.
Delegação de Honduras com a palavra.
Honduras has the floor, Ambassador. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. Castro, our president, visited the Pope and was also in a position to bid farewell. Given that initiative, I'd like to pay tribute to Pope Francisco Bergoglio. I'm going to give you an anecdote. In 2019, when the Pope went to Panama, he visited the priest, Fernando Cassioni, who has a church and who governs something against suffering in Paraíso, in the Department of Paraíso in Honduras. There, the Pope was there and he spoke about his project. And the Pope said, no, give me $1 million to alleviate the suffering of immigrants. And much as this is a border area where a lot of migrants flow, well, the generosity of the Pope was there. He was a major writer as well. And for example, the Pope also quoted Latin American poets and writers like Maria Benedetti, Jorge Luis Borges, and the Mexican Octavio Paz that he quoted when he went to the Americas. And as such, then, the Pope, the Father, his humanism against war, this is so beautiful. He always advocated against any war. And it's interesting because there are more threats of war in the world as opposed to having fewer. And I was accompanying the Pope's trip, Juan Antonio Cruz, Monsignor Cruz, and I don't want the bell to ring. I still have time to say what I have to say, but I'd like to offer some words to His Holiness. Don't be afraid of crying. It'll clean your soul. Don't fear threats. It'll make you weaker. Don't be afraid to make a mistake, and don't fear solitude. God will always be with you. Pope Francisco Bergoglio. Pope Francis Bergoglio. Jamaica has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor on behalf of the delegation of Jamaica to pay a tribute to Pope Francis. First, I'd like to thank you for allowing the inclusion of this topic on today's agenda. Thanks also for the very inspiring presentations made by the distinguished panelists. Born Jorge Bergoglio in Argentina to Italian migrants, Pope Francis, the 266th Pope, died at the age of 88. The first pontiff from Latin America, Pope Francis distinguished himself as a voice for the voiceless, the poor, and the dispossessed. He endeared himself to the world with his quiet humility and deep compassion. He was fearless in his advocacy for social inclusion, equity, and climate action, and other issues of the day, as he urged leaders to implement policies which would shape a more just and humane world. As head of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis became a global advocate for peace, fairness, equity, and was a steadfast champion for the poor and vulnerable. His quiet humility and compassionate leadership style earned him the love, admiration of millions, and deepened the faith of countless believers. It is therefore no coincidence that Pope Francis' death, which came at the end of the oldest period on the Christian calendar, with his appearance on Resurrection Sunday, was a poignant reminder of his unwavering dedication to duty and to the people. He has influenced and touched the lives of millions, inspiring hope in every corner of the globe, and leaving behind a legacy of love and peace in a divided world. On behalf of the government and people of Jamaica, I reiterate our sincere condolences to the Catholic community, Christians, and all who mourn the death of Pope Francis. Let us honor his legacy by upholding the principles and ideals which he exemplified: love for all, humility, inclusiveness, peace, protection of the marginalized, taking care of the poor and those who suffer, and his refusal to judge others. May his soul rest in peace. I thank you.
Passo a palavra à
Delegation of the United States has the floor.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the United States, I extend our condolences to the Holy See and to the global Catholic community on the passing of His Holiness Pope Francis. As the first Pope from the Western Hemisphere, Pope Francis brought to the papacy a lived connection to our region. In November 2015, Pope Francis received Secretary General Almagro at the Vatican, where they discussed the importance of promoting dialogue, peace, and human rights in the Americas. We welcomed the deepening of this engagement in 2019, when the Vatican established a permanent observer office dedicated exclusively to the OAS. This move underscored the value Pope Francis placed on the countries of the Americas and his recognition of the OAS as a forum for cooperation. Pope Francis also actively promoted interreligious dialogue, including collaborative efforts between the OAS and religious communities of the Catholic, Jewish, and Muslim faiths, while welcoming in indigenous communities from the Amazon. He was a consistent and powerful voice against anti-Semitism and against Holocaust denial. The United States looks forward to presenting again a resolution this year on religious freedom at the upcoming General Assembly in June. We look forward to working with all delegations to advance this effort. President Trump ordered flags flown at half-staff across the United States in Pope Francis' honor. In his words, "Rest in peace, Pope Francis. May God bless him and all who loved him." Thank you.
El Salvador has the floor. Ambassador. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My delegation would like to echo the tribute and express our deepest condolences to the entire Holy See Permanent Observer mission, given the passing of His Holiness. We join the solidarity with the Catholic people and all the believers who bid him farewell, particularly the Argentinian people who are doing so as well. Pope Francis not only will be remembered as the original pontiff from Latin America, but also as an undeniable, tireless defender of the poor, standing for social justice, courage, love, peace, reached everyone. He will also be recognized for his deep-seated pastoral vocation and his leadership, which went beyond the borders of the Vatican, accompanied by an example of service and empathy. His message of peace and a life of love dedicated to neighbors with simple words and bountiful gestures not only underscored the dignity of all mankind, but something that we should follow. We wish that he rest in peace. For all those who follow him as well should be remembered. Paraguay. Paraguay would like to, in all due respect and emotion, echo the comments of this tribute to Pope Francis, whose humility and firm commitment to social justice and permanent call for fraternity marked an entire era. At the same time, we would like to express our solidarity with the Distinguished Permanent Observer Mission of the Holy See to the OAS, represented by Monsignor Juan Antonio Cruz Serrano, as well as with the government and the people of our sister republic, Argentina, for the passing of an illustrious son of that nation, admired and loved by millions in the entire world. For the Paraguayan people, Pope Francis was not only a head of state of the Vatican and leader of the Catholic Church, but he was also a very close pastor and a Latin American brother who knew how to look at Paraguay and offer it love. He visited Paraguay in July 2015 and was emblazoned on our history, meeting with the dispossessed and the most vulnerable with hopes of hope that were addressed to all sectors of society. He left us indelible memories, sentences, quotes that continue to resonate today, such as in a meeting with the young people in Paraguay, he said, and I quote, "Build bonds, but build them well." And another one when he alluded to the role that women played in rebuilding our country after the Triple Alliance War, he said, and I quote, "The Paraguayan women is the most glorious of the Americas," end of quote. In addition, during the visit, he went to the cathedral, which was a small basilica-like place. He knew our people and our culture. From his young times, he had deep-seated friendship with Dr. Estrina de Cariaga, an exemplar of Paraguay for the defense of human rights and a victim of the dictatorship. When she worked as a chemical technician in a laboratory, they were friends. And the bishop, and then as Archbishop of Buenos Aires, every 8th of December he had a mass in honor of the patron saint, Virgin of the Milagre de Cacope, every year. And this is the most important religious date in our Paraguayan calendar. Also, Pope Francis will go down in the record as the two Paraguayan cardinals with whom he was friendly, first time in history. His Eminence Alberto Martinez and Mr. Lopez, this one was naturalized for 18 years in our country. Given his gestures, his shared history with our people, and everything he did, the love of Paraguay for Pope Francis was and continues to be immense. We saw a Pope that understood our fights. He valued our dignity, and he inspired us with simplicity and firmness to never lose hope. His legacy will be written in our collective memory as a beacon call behind faith, compassion, justice, and peace. Thank you very much, Pope Francis. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor to Brazil. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And we also truly appreciate the speakers who are with us today for their words. Mr. Chairman, today we pay tribute to the memory of His Holiness Pope Francis with deep-seated respect and gratitude. Francis was the most welcoming pope in a fractured world because of inequalities, conflicts, and intolerance. He incarnated the message that we are all brothers and sisters, regardless of origin, creed, or condition. Elected in 2013, after a long pastoral mission in Argentina, Jorge Mario Bergoglio chose his name, inspired in St. Francis of Assisi, a symbol of peace and simplicity. And his pontificate reflected this choice, a ministry addressed to people, to the marginalized, to migrants, to those who suffer in silence, and to the people that the world often forgets. His language was accessible, his look was deep, and his message was profoundly humane. In his documents, such as the Apostolic Plea, the joy of the gospel, and the encyclical Be Praised and All Brothers, he launched a call for solidarity in ecology across the board and in social inclusion with global responsibility for the most vulnerable. Pope Francis was also a bridge between religions. He was a builder of interreligious dialogue. He promoted understanding between Christians, Jews, Muslims, and believers of so many other traditions. He sought respect for spiritual diversity and that it's not an obstacle, but it is the bedrock for long-lasting peace. Mr. Chairman, here at the OAS, the foundational charter is anchored in human dignity and peaceful living together. This message truly resonates. Pope Francis reminds us that building peace begins in recognizing the other as an equal, in bidding farewell to the last papal blessing. Love overcomes hate, truth overcomes lies, forgiveness overcomes anything else, and we have to be guided by hope, fraternity, and dialogue throughout the continent and in the world. Thank you very much. Uruguay, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Today we get together to pay hope to a very significant person for our region and for the entire world, Pope Francis. First Latin American to occupy this high position. A spiritual leader, he went beyond borders and he transformed everything in hope, with passion and hope. He was lucid and based on the biggest causes of humanity: social justice, care of the environment, human dignity, and fraternity amongst peoples. We underscore his tireless commitment to peace as well as to dialogue and justice. We truly believe that his strong defense of the dispossessed and his most courage justice has left a legacy in favor of peace, and this will be undeniable in the world sphere. In Uruguay, he will be remembered with respect in Uruguay always. And I would like to reiterate our sincerest condolences to the Catholic world, the Holy See, and to the congregation of all Catholics and all people in Argentina with whom we share this loss this afternoon. Mr. Chairman, for the memory of His Holiness, we are inspired to continue to build a more just, fair, humane, and woven world. Thank you very much. Grenada has the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chair, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, and esteemed guests, it is with profound honor that the delegation of Grenada pays tribute to the extraordinary life and legacy of His Holiness Pope Francis. His unwavering commitment to justice, peace, and human dignity, expressed through the moral and spiritual leadership of the Catholic faith, has been a beacon of hope and inspiration to people of all backgrounds across the globe. Pope Francis exemplified compassion, humility, and solidarity, living out his guiding belief that, and I quote, "My people are poor, and I am one of them." Through his embrace of the sick and homeless, his comfort to migrants and refugees, and many other acts of kindness, he gave living expression to the value of love, dignity, and care for others. His legacy also includes acts of reconciliation, from being the first pope to visit the Arabian Peninsula and Iraq, to acknowledging the Catholic Church's role in the suffering of indigenous peoples in the Americas. His legacy reminds us that moral leadership requires the willingness to stand alongside the vulnerable, to speak truth, and to act with conviction and compassion. Today, we continue to face grave challenges: conflict, inequality, and climate disruption. As member states of the Organization of American States, let us honor the memory and mission of Pope Francis by recommitting ourselves to the ideals he championed: peace, justice, solidarity, and human dignity. Let his life inspire us to continue building a hemisphere rooted in cooperation, compassion, and hope. I thank you, Chair.
Guatemala has the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like to warmly greet the distinguished invited guests, Abraham Skorka and Imam Marwan Gil, distinguished permanent representatives, illustrious members. We thank Bolivia for including this point on the agenda today. On behalf of the government of Guatemala, I would like to address the Honorable Permanent Council to express our deepest condolences for the passing of His Holiness Pope Francis on the 21st of April. Pope Francis was a spiritual leader. He was an extraordinary man, and he was tireless when it came to building bridges between peoples, cultures. Since his election in 2023, he transformed the Catholic Church through his wisdom, his closeness to the most vulnerable, and his commitment to justice and care of our common home. For Guatemala, a deep-seated Christian nation, the personality of Pope Francis represented a spiritual, fundamental person. His constant calls for building peace, fraternal dialogue, and protection of the most needed deeply resonated with our people, and this was a source of inspiration for our public policies geared towards inclusion and human development across the board. We remember with gratitude his interest in Latin America, his native land. He looked at the challenges that affected our people, particularly when it came to migration, poverty, and violence. Over the course of his pontificate, Pope Francis was a voice for the rights of migrants. Many of them were Central American brothers and sisters, and he remembered them as people, not numbers, and for whom he advocated tirelessly in the international community. His moral leadership in topics such as fight against corruption, promotion of peace, and the fight against climate change have left an indelible footprint in the conscience of our nations and in the international system. His encyclical as to the care of our common home and his constant concern for the effects of climate change in the most vulnerable countries, in Guatemala being one of them, is a moral call that goes beyond creeds and borders. During his last months, despite his known health problems, Pope Francis has finished his pastoral mission with determination. He gave all of us the model of service and love to the very end. His testimony of life, marked by consistency between his actions and words, will remain as a legacy for all of humanity. As a representative of Guatemala to this organization, I should like to reaffirm the commitment of my country with the values that Pope Francis promoted: human dignity, solidarity, dialogue, peace and security, disarmament and sustainable development. These values are shared with the foundational principles of this very organization. Right now, as we grieve for the Catholic Church and for millions of people in the entire world, Guatemala joins in the sentiments of condolences and at the same time gratitude for the extraordinary pontiff, Pope Francis. His mission of a poor church for poor people was a beacon call to build bridges, not walls, and he continued to inspire us in our diplomatic work and in our quest for a more fair, peaceful, and brotherly love hemisphere. May his soul rest in peace, and may his legacy for justice continue to open the path for all of us. Thank you very much. Ecuador has the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This delegation would like to begin by thanking Rabbi Abraham Skorka and Imam Manuel for sharing their thoughts with us this morning on Pope Francis. We pay tribute to His Holiness this morning, and since the world knew that Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the Jesuit, would take on the name of Francis for his papacy, since his death, his pastoral mission and his vision of life were very deeply felt with spiritual symbolism. In Ecuador, where we have a majority of Catholics, we embraced his visit in 2015. Millions went to the streets to hear and see the first Latin American pontiff, who was giving us the message of social justice, unity, and care of the dispossessed. This is a message that marked us as a nation that we remember till today. The Pope's visit was the first one that he had in a Spanish-speaking Latin American country. His initial words were given in the climate of a complex time, and he asked permission so that we could all pay the debt that Latin America has with the poorest of the poor. In Guayaquil, Pope Francis conveyed another message that was remembered in my country: family as the key nucleus of society, and asking to find solutions, concrete solutions for the many difficulties and the important challenges that families today have to grapple with. He defended the family as the greatest wealth that other institutions cannot substitute. When he went back to the capital, 900,000 people got together in the Parque Centenario for a second encounter. There he spoke about evangelization, social justice, and peace, and asked Ecuadorians to stay together in their diversity and to understand the greatest wealth that the country has. Another very important message from the Pope was when he met with educators and students from the Quito Pontificate Catholic University. He was in Quito and he spoke about his encyclical, which is the place with all people and Mother Nature, and he spoke to fight against climate change. He emphasized the need to very early on live with caring the environment and other values. Perhaps the most important instrument that Pope Francis used and which characterized him was humility. His stay in Ecuador ended with a visit to an old people's home and with other religious priests and seminarians in Quito. His Holiness with Ecuador will be remembered for many years, always giving us hope for peace during very difficult times that the country lived through, as happened with the Ecuadorian coast and the natural disaster. This was so when he had a hearing with President Noboa last year in the Vatican, during which time he underscored the work that his administration does in favor of young Ecuadorians and migrants and the most vulnerable in a context of public insecurity because of international organized crime that grips the country. Mr. Chairman, the message of Pope Francis for peace in 2015 resonated throughout his entire mandate in his life, and that was the same in his last appearance when he called for peace in the most severe conflicts that the world is living through right now. We have to leave this message of unity and diversity, the quest for peace and well-being for the most needy. Hopefully it will continue to inspire us so that we can move ahead, fulfilling the highest August values of the Organization of Americans. Let us continue to pray for Pope Francis. Thank you very much. Mexico has the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The delegation of Mexico echoes in the tribute paid to the memory of His Holiness Pope Francis, head of the Vatican City, that is an observer in the OAS. The social and ethical legacy has left a deep-seated footprint for us during our times. Our special warm greetings to the observer and the representative of the Holy See to the OAS, Juan Antonio Cruz. As the first head of state in the Vatican from Latin America, Pope Francis was characterized, given his voice for the dispossessed and for those that have been historically excluded, with the weakest and those that suffer for different reasons, and he stood for the defense of the environment. As such, he expressed this in two of his main encyclicals. The Audit por Si, it's a call for ecological awareness and shared responsibility when it comes to caring for our planet. And in Fraternitude, where he affirmed his vision of universal fraternity based on solidarity, peace, and bridges of religions and rejection of anything that went afield of that. He promoted peace. He believed in building bridges and in the quest of consensuses in international fora. Especially, he cared to get close to migrants and refugees, the defense of indigenous peoples, and his permanent tireless call to put people center front in all political and economic action, raising the voice against exclusion, inequality, and all forms of violence and discrimination. The decision to defend his ideals in the face of challenges was a big model of value. His legacy will remain as an ethical beacon to build more just societies that are humane, inclusive, and respectful. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Haiti, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Haitian delegation joins the words of the other delegates of the Organization of American States in memory of Pope Francis. Pope Francis was a remarkable man of goodness and humanity. Pope Francis never missed the opportunity to position himself in favor of the Haitian people. He supported international solidarity in favor of Haiti, and Monday, October 13th, 2023, in Place Entière, the Pope showed his solidarity with the Haitian people who suffered from the violence wrought by armed gangs. Pope Francis called on the international community to continue to work to build peace and reconciliation within the country. We should never forget, he said, our Haitian brothers and sisters who live in constant insecurity and at the hands of armed gangs. He made a call on all of us to put away all forms of violence. And he also, in his call on the international community, asked all of us to continue to work to build peace and reconciliation in the country while defending the dignity and rights of all. In January 25th, in his apostolic remarks, Sidney Voltaire met with Pope Francis in Rome, and these two leaders talked about the possibility of an international conference on Haiti. And what we were struck by in Haiti was the humility with which the Pope himself opened a conversation about the possibility of this conference. Pope Francis will remain in our hearts as a tireless beacon of hope and someone who fought not just for Christians, but for humans and humanists throughout the world. Thank you. Thank you. The Observer State France, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, as other permanent members, dear colleagues, I join my colleagues in rendering tribute to Pope Francis. He was not the first non-European pope, but he was the first from the Americas, and he was the first pope from a congregation that had never had a successor. And he was also the first to choose as his name St. Francis of Assisi, which was a name that no other pope had ever taken, because no pope in the past had inspired himself in the poor and those who are excluded. He was true to that closeness. In 2013, he welcomed people from all walks of life, and he focused on those who are marginalized and forgot. And his message in Marseille in 2023, which brought together many different leaders and more than 60,000 people, he showed that our community must be open and give a daily example. He spoke from his Casa San Marta. He spoke of environmental stewardship. He was a fervent defender, and he called it our shared home. His interreligious promotion of dialogue and peace and forgotten conflicts, his initiatives for cooperation between nations made him the voice of brave fraternity beyond the world of Catholics, but throughout the world. France had the unique honor of receiving a visit from him 3 times. Loved his message of joy and love and action. And his last visit was in Corsica last year, and we will remember his message. Thank you. Spain, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to add Spain's voice to the words of condolence for the loss of Pope Francis. His commitment to peace, social justice, and the most vulnerable among us leave a humanist, a voice of solidarity, a mark on our history that will be there forever. And his life is marked by his fight for those who lived in vulnerability, his defense of the environment, and his worry for all those who lived on the periphery. I'd also like to remind everyone of his defense of peace, his work for Palestine and Ukraine, and his work and faith in dialogue to resolve any type of conflict. In sum, he was a man of peace and intercultural dialogue. We cannot forget his defense of human rights, giving visibility to the LGBTIQ+ community, as well as his defense of migrants and victims of trafficking. Our sincere grief at the passing of this remarkable man, and particularly to Mr. San Antonio Cruz, permanent observer, we remember the voice of a man who always defended those who were voiceless, a voice in favor of peace, dialogue, and coexistence. The values that he defended in life, which we are remembering here today, must continue living in us and serving as an inspiration to create a more dignified life and world for all of us. Thank you. Portugal, you have the floor. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, Portugal would like to echo the words already expressed in tribute to Pope Francis in this hall. He was the head of state to the first universal entity that recognized the independence of Portugal in a few centuries ago. He was an extraordinary pope with a singular love of humanism, humanity, and a passion for everyone. In his visits to Portugal, when he was there in 2017 to celebrate or commemorate the celebration of St. Fatima, and in 2023 in a market, he established a strong link with the Portuguese people. He always spoke of everyone. And we must remember how tirelessly he worked for the church to get closer to the people and vice versa. And the best way we have to fulfill his legacy as a remarkable religious leader, but especially in an uncertain word, would be by honoring his teachings, remembering his messages, and lifting his beliefs that included that not everyone, not just believers, but non-believers who were also touched by his message. This isn't just the Catholic world we're talking about, but the whole world was touched by that remarkable man. He was genuinely humble, because he was who he was. And in his honor, he showed a strength that very few show, and a moral authority that always fought for a better world. His work and his memory will always be with us. I thank you. Thank you. The Holy See, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. The Holy See is grateful for these words in tribute to Pope Francis at today's Permanent Council session. We appreciate the valuable expressions and reflections of Imam Marwan Gil and Rabbi Skorka, who spoke to the legacy of our deceased Pope Francis, and we appreciate the words in his memory. Mr. Chair, Jorge Maria Bergoglio was born in Buenos Aires. He was the son of Italian immigrants, and he was the first from the Americas in being elected pontiff. During his 12 years as Pope, he was a Pope of bringing people together, dialogue in favor of peace. He visited 66 countries, and of those, 10 are in the Americas: Brazil, Ecuador, Bolivia, Paraguay, Cuba, the United States, and the headquarters of the United Nations, Mexico, Colombia, Chile, Peru, Panama, and the last of his visits was to Canada. Though these visits were pastoral in nature, he had meetings with heads of state and local authorities. And in these meetings, he called on reciprocal dialogue as the only possible form of building peace and bridges of understanding. On a multilateral level, he had many meetings with the diplomatic corps before the Holy See, and he gave remarks in various international fora. He constantly called on multilateralism that would, in the interest of peace and stability, fight against hunger and for development. Pope Francis also widened paths towards understanding with different political actors throughout the world, with culture and art, and with different practicers of different religions. His encyclical Fratelli Tutti called all of us to brotherhood and social friendship as ties that bind us all. Pope Francis was also someone who served the dispossessed and those who are excluded. He wanted to reach the structural and existential peripheries of society and where every person lived. And that is why he went to visit people in different realities, and especially those who needed to be embraced, given visibility, and attended to. And during his visits to the countries of this region, he visited the sick in hospitals, as we saw in Brazil, Bolivia, Paraguay. He met with prisoners in women's prisons and youth detention centers in Colombia and Panama. He was with migrants in their place of crossing to another country, such as Ciudad Juarez in Mexico. He was close to the people who lived in refuges, in orphanages, in this city, in Washington, but also in Quito, in Ecuador, and in Madre de Dios, Peru. He went to the territory of indigenous peoples in Temuco, in Chile, in Masquasis, and Iqualit, in Canada. And with these gestures and with his words, he wanted to center people, recognize people's dignity that must always be respected, valued, and loved. Lastly, I'd like to highlight that Pope Francis was also a tireless fighter for our shared home. In his encyclical Laudato Si and his apostolic exhortation Laudate Deum, he made a call for the whole world to work on behalf of the planet as a gift that we had received and that we should preserve for future generations. He looked towards this region, in particularly the Amazon region, and called a synod in 2019, and then following an exhortation, Querida Amazonia, Dear Amazonia, which is a chant and an appreciation of that natural biome and the indigenous populations and traditions and the nature that all of which should be preserved for all of humanity. Mr. Chair, the delegation of the Holy See wants the legacy of Pope Francis, the first pontiff of this region, to continue living vibrant in this institution, as we've seen with other diplomatic and personal relationships. These are calls to dialogue and to bringing together with the common good of countries of the Americas and in every person in the Americas. Many thanks, Mr. President, Mr. Chair. Not seeing any more requests for the floor, we would like to express our thanks to the different delegates for their words and our speakers. I suggest that we take due note of the presentations and the remarks, which will be in the summary of this session. Not seeing any objections, it is so agreed. Thank you. I would like to say that we'll have a recess at 1:30. We'll continue for another 15 minutes, see where we get, and then we will have a break. The next point on our order of business is, given what Brazil had requested, is the commemoration of World Portuguese Language Day. Brazil, you have the floor.
Muito obrigada, senhor presidente.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Bernardo Soares, one of the homonyms or sister words of our Portuguese author Fernando Pessoa escreveu, every time around, my country is the Portuguese language. To celebrate this common country is the purpose of the International World Day of the Portuguese Language, established in 2009 by the Community of Portuguese-Speaking Countries, the CLPT, and recognized in 2019 as the official date by UNESCO. Portuguese is the fifth most spoken language of the world and the most spoken in the Southern Hemisphere. More than 250 million people have Portuguese as their mother tongue, spread over 4 different continents, the Americas, Europe, Africa, and Asia. Portuguese is an open door to know different cultures. From Brazil to the islands of Cape Verde, São Tomé and Príncipe, through the Atlantic to Portugal, Guinea-Bissau, and Angola, and even to the Indian Ocean, where it's spoken in Mozambique and Timor-Leste. This cultural flow is a two-way street. Not only do we devour the works of Spanish, Portuguese-speaking authors of other countries in the world, but we also export our language today. In addition to the soap operas and popular music, Portuguese is all over social media, taken on by YouTubers and influencers. The information technology is slash ocean distances and favor the growth of a more global Portuguese without relinquishing local wealth and richness. Brazil and the CLPT, we have seen Portuguese language as a pluricentric language. There's diversity of different accents, different expressions and vocabulary. It is a powerful point to consolidate Portuguese as a global language of communication in the 21st century. The International World Day of the Portuguese Language also works here in this organization, particularly when we talk about multilingualism. Multilingualism is the ability of a community and an international community to express itself in various languages. And this ability is crucial to make the OAS get closer to our societies and allow our populations that are part of it to participate in the dialogues here in this forum. A multilingual OAS is a more democratic OAS, one that is more efficient, effective, and democratic. OAS is part of the international community that recognizes this language, in addition to Mercosur, the African Union, the European Union, and of course the CLPT. Brazil, alongside other Portuguese-speaking countries, will continue to promote recognition of Portuguese as an official language of the United Nations. And then finally, Mr. Chairman, I would like to underscore the establishment in 2022 of the Institute Guimarães Rosa that modernized the institutional Brazilian framework to promote national culture and Portuguese abroad. Of the 24 units or departments of the Institute that are already up and running, 11 are located in countries in our hemisphere. I should like to wrap up with an invitation by Caetano Veloso in his song Língua for the future blossoming of our language, and that you say it and think it and speak it. Long live Portuguese in all of its forms and in all of its voices. Thank you very much.
Eu vou passar a palavra primeiro ao...
Thank you. Vice Chair, I will give you the floor, and I invite other delegates to speak, including the Angola permanent observer at the end. It's an honor for me to speak on this important day to commemorate World Portuguese Language Day, a day that invites all of us to celebrate not just a language, but a cultural bridge that unites more than 260 million people on 4 continents. Portuguese, the World Portuguese Day, declared as a World Heritage, it's World Heritage, is rich with literature and art and is shared throughout the world in nations as distinct as Brazil, Portugal, Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, Cape Verde, Equatorial Guinea, and others. And in our hemisphere, Brazil has immensely enriched our cultural heritage in this region, from the exuberant Amazon to the rivers of Rio de Janeiro to bossa nova music and music of and words of Paulo Coelho. We are enriched, and our inter-American cultural mosaic is more vibrant. We highlight the importance of cultural diversity as a pillar of our multilateral coexistence, and Portuguese is important. It's one of the 4 official languages of our organization, together with Spanish, English, and French. This linguistic diversity doesn't present a barrier. It presents an opportunity, richness. It's a unique opportunity to understand the world learning another language and to access different perspectives and ways of being. Portuguese, with its melody and its expressiveness, gives us irreplaceable perspectives on human experience and our shared reality. At a moment where multilateralism is facing unprecedented challenges, we should remember that intercultural dialogue, which is facilitated through knowledge and mutual respect in language, is one of the most powerful tools that we have to build peace and understanding. Portuguese, in that vein, is an instrument for peace. It's a vehicle for international cooperation and sustainable development. The community of Portuguese-speaking countries, an organization of which many member states and observer missions are members, can serve as a base for cooperation on topics such as education, health, science and technology, and governance and economic development. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chair, celebrating the World Portuguese Day is not just making tribute to a language, but it's invaluable contribution on the part of Portuguese speakers to our shared civilization. It's valuing Portuguese as a source of resilience and cultural and diversity, and looking at multilingualism as a foundational pillar of our organization and our activities. Panama, being close to, or because of its geographic location, making it a bridge between cultures, recognizes this importance, and it's key to international cooperation and dialogue and diplomacy. We call on all member states to help promote Portuguese, its teaching in their education systems, and to promote initiatives that promote intercultural activities with Portuguese speakers. We hope this day will help us continue to build bridges of understanding and look at our multilingual diversity as one of our strengths, and to work together for a hemisphere that is more integrated, prosperous and fraternal. Thank you. Thank you. Uruguay, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. We join the celebration of the Portuguese language, reminding those members of the satellite community since 2009, and which was consecrated in 2019 as a World Heritage Day. And this also reflects our commitment to democracy, human rights, social justice, and sustainable development. We believe in those principles and stand in solidarity with indigenous people. We have been an observer state, and in that vein, and Portuguese and its influence is very deep. It has been recognized and valued by Uruguay. We reaffirm our solidarity with Portuguese-speaking nations and the promotion of that beautiful language, which has had such an important impact on our own culture, along our borders and within our country. Celebrating Portuguese also means celebrating plurality, building a more inclusive future for all. Thank you. Thank you. Canada, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We thank Brazil for presenting this commemoration to the Permanent Council. We are happy to commemorate today with you the World Portuguese Language Day. This celebration shows is of particular importance to Canada, which is interested in dynamic and multilingual countries, particularly in Ontario and Quebec. British Columbia, where Nelly Furtado was born. She's a Portuguese speaker and singer. She's a national pride.
Plays an important role in our cultural fabric in Canada. We are glad to say that this unique and diverse community includes many Canadians of Brazilian origin, enriching our society and reinforcing people-to-people ties. Canadian Portuguese speakers have made significant contributions to Canada through entrepreneurship, politics, faith communities, local organizations, and participation in various industries and sectors within the multicultural landscape of my home. Canada is also pleased to have been accepted as an associate observer of the Community of Portuguese-Speaking Countries, CPELP, since 2021. Canada shares the CPELP's core values and goals, which we seek to reinforce and support by undertaking initiatives with those countries. For instance, we recently sponsored an online Portuguese language leadership course called Liderança Inclusiva e Transformadora, delivered by two Portuguese-speaking professors from the University of Ottawa for 32 emerging leaders, primarily women, from the 7 CPLP countries. This day of commemoration also highlights the importance of ensuring that all people can maintain their languages, take pride in their ancestry, culture, and language, and always have a sense of belonging. Obrigado, Señor Presidente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Mexico, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. My delegation recognized the permanent mission of Brazil and thanks the inclusion of this World Portuguese Day on the order of business, which recognizes the importance of cultural and linguistic diversity, which is a point of pride for our region and for this organization. Portuguese has 260 million speakers across 5 continents, and it's the official language of 9 countries and various international organizations such as the OAS. In the case of Mexico, accents, rhythms, and expressions that come from Brazilian Portuguese have left a profound imprint through their prose, like that of Machado, Clarice Lispector, Vinicius de Moraes, and Jorge Morado. For the Mexican writer Juan Rulfo, who wrote Pedro Páramo, one of the greatest prose writers in the history of the Americas came from Brazilian Portuguese. And that's just one example. Its literature has been taught in the main universities of my country and in other language-focused centers, such as the National University, the Autonomous National University of Mexico, which has a very distinguished program of 4 years in Portuguese literature, and which is a clear testimony of the importance that is given to the knowledge, the teaching of this language, its literature, and it's a program that has seen graduate thousands of Mexican students. When it comes to the relevance of Portuguese for our region, my delegation celebrates this day of commemoration because it's an example of cultural pluralism and linguistic pluralism within the OAS and our region. And Mexico so values diversity because it makes us richer. Thank you.
Passo a palavra à delegação da Costa Rica. Embaixador.
Thank you. Costa Rica, you have the floor. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by thanking the permanent mission of Brazil to the OAS for this valuable initiative to commemorate the World Portuguese Language Day. It's celebrated every May 5th, and it is of Rui Barbosa, who was a diplomat and a humanist from Brazil and who believed in the importance of Portuguese language and that left an indelible mark on our region. This day is celebrated to celebrate the profound historic, cultural, and linguistic roots that unite the 9 countries of Portuguese language across 5 continents. Celebrating this day in a more multilateral space doesn't just speak to the value of Portuguese itself, but of multilingualism as a tool for inclusion and mutual understanding and strengthening our own democracies. In Costa Rica, Portuguese is the 3rd foreign language that is most often studied after English and French, and that growing interest is not just a reaction to in academic and professional circles, but also we see it as a force to tie together and bring together Portuguese-speaking communities. We have the IPE in Costa Rica at the Costa Rica University, which signed a memorandum of understanding and a program for literature, Portuguese literature and language in our country. And this initiative has been key to widen access to this language in Latin America and the Caribbean, particularly for students and teachers of Portuguese. We also are proud to say that we have within Costa Rica, the Brazilian Cultural Institute, which has not just promoted the Brazilian or Portuguese language, but Brazilian culture, music, gastronomy, and Brazilian art forms. To conclude, I'd quote the Nobel laureate José Saramago, who said, Language is perhaps the greatest good that a people can have. We hope this day will continue helping us to greater understanding in French, English, Spanish, and Portuguese, all of the languages of the OAS that so enrich our experience and the future of our Americas. Many thanks.
Passo a palavra.
Delegation of Chile has the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, other delegations. I'd like to thank Brazil for having convened and commemorated the International Day of the Portuguese Language, a date that goes beyond languages to value a vast universe of culture and humanity that is shared with millions of people in the world. The Portuguese language is a bedrock of humanity's wealth and a live expression of history and the diversity of our peoples. In the inter-American context, it represents a crucial bridge amongst Latin Americans and the bridge with Europeans, Caribbeans, and Africans from Chile. We truly value the multilingualism as a key tool for mutual understanding, cultural diplomacy, and understanding. In this spirit, we have a concrete example of the active presence of the Portuguese language in various Chilean universities, where we have programs that teach the language, and Chilean students have scholarships and exchange programs with Portuguese-speaking countries, particularly Brazil. And as such, then, Portuguese has been incorporated as a foreign language in some public schools, especially in regions that have a strong trade and cultural link with Mercosul. We recognize the leadership of Brazil in the Portuguese-speaking language countries, and we celebrate the presence in multilateral fora, such as the OAS, where linguistic multilingualism reflects plurality that defines us. So I would like to wrap up with Jose Mago's quote, as was already quoted by our colleague from Costa Rica, who anybody who teaches languages teaches not walls that separate us, but bridges that connect us. And this also reflects the spirit of brotherly love amongst our people, and we share and celebrate that today. Guatemala has the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Guatemala truly appreciates the permanent mission of Brazil for having promoted this very important commemoration on the International Day of the Portuguese Language. We go along with its recognition not only because of historical relevance and cultural importance of the Portuguese language, also because this celebration invites us to think about multilingualism as a crucial pillar of the inter-American system and international diplomacy. As a profoundly, deeply rooted country in Garifuna and Spanish and others, Guatemala understands that language is not just a tool for communication, but also a vehicle for identity, memory, and social cohesion. Multilaterally speaking, this linguistic diversity covers or takes on even more importance. And the United Nations has recognized this and said that multilingualism is a fundamental principle that leads to equality among states and genuine participation of everybody in the decision-making process of all of us. The Portuguese language and Portuguese-speaking cultures with more than 160 million people in 5 continents is an official language of this organization and exemplifies the potential of languages to build bridges amongst regions, traditions, and unite differences. This is characterized by promoting multilingualism, and it also means promoting peace, solidarity, and shared development. Guatemala reaffirms its support to the efforts that promote this fundamental value in the OAS, reflecting and respecting the wealth of our peoples. Thank you very much. Permanent Observer, Portugal. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, Portugal would like to commend Brazil for putting this agenda item on this day's work, International Day of the Portuguese Language. This is more than just a cultural language. To underscore Portuguese is to celebrate an element that brings together nations and cultures. The Portuguese language, over the course of various countries, centuries and continents, is there, and that is why we have to look at its multi-identification nature. in a world that is becoming more digital and more equal, where we are looking at differences and where the wealth of diversity is falling down, but where we need to pull things together, we do have to celebrate a language, and one of the most spoken languages of the world is the Just of Vitality, and a hopeful act. We truly believe that in the entire world there are about 7,000 languages. Many are spoken by very small communities, and others are disappearing. But all of us who are here in this room speak world languages, and it is the responsibility and the privilege, as Brazil said, to recognize the value of multilingualism as a tool for integration and promotion for cultural diversity. In 2025, more than 265 million people speak the Portuguese language, and we believe that by the end of this century, this number might even hit 500 million. Portuguese is the fourth maternal language spoken in the world, and it was adopted as the official language by 32 international organizations, including the OAS. We see intense work underway so that the United Nations will also join this list. Work that Brazil and Portugal have spearheaded with the support of Angola and other member states. Ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, the Portuguese-speaking languages in 1996 decided to create a community, and they decided to give the name of their common language to the organization they established, and it's called Community of Portuguese-Speaking Countries, with a headquarters in Lisbon, with 9 members, with many dozens of other countries from all continents and international organizations as observers. The vitality of a language shows its growth, and the growth and interest for Portuguese is also seen in various parts of the world through official Portuguese structures. Portuguese is taught in 76 countries with specific protocol, with 347 institutes that teach. Just in the United States alone, officially, there are more than 2,000 students, and the perspective is that this is going to grow. We also have to recognize the presence of big Portuguese-speaking communities in many member states of this organization. This is a very important asset. So to wrap up, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, I should like to underscore that to celebrate here in this August organization a language from Portugal, Brazil, Angola, and many other speakers on 4 continents is a privilege. And once again, remembering Pope Francis, who defended and said that diversity is wealth. I truly appreciate your attention. Muchas gracias. And I say it, thank you. I say it with merci beaucoup. But today, over and above everything else, muito obrigado. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Permanent Observer, Angola. Thank you very much for giving us the floor, Mr. Chairman. The delegation of Angola would like to avail itself of this opportunity to join its voice to the comments that came before us in this meeting of the Permanent Council of the OAS. Your Excellencies, on the 5th of May, we celebrate the International Day of the Portuguese Language. Portuguese language, an ocean of cultures and a world of possibilities. That's its motto. We embrace the proposal by the delegation of Brazil to include it on today's agenda. We are grateful for that. The Portuguese language unites millions of people in Europe, Africa, the Americas, and Oceania. It underscores and is a very important vehicle of communication and work. And we defend, thus, multilingualism, the broad spread dissemination of Portuguese as a working language in international organizations. for the African Union, the Organization of American States, and others. Celebrating the International Day of the Portuguese Language is also an occasion to reflect about its importance, the wealth of our language, not just as a tool for communication, but above everything else as a symbol of identity and cultural diversity of our peoples. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank all of you for your attention. As Spain has the floor. Thank you. I would like to commend you for the 5th of May, celebrating the International Day of the Portuguese Language. Spain defends multilingualism and recognizes it as a tool to strengthen social cohesion and sustainable development and global protection of languages. The strength of the languages, not just in demographic terms, but also is seen through the artistic and cultural forms. To look at the Portuguese language, for us, it's to celebrate a sister language. And then lastly, in this sisterhood, I would like to remind everyone that Spain will support the next summit of the Americas in 26, and it is built on multilingualism. This is a fundamental defining point of the identity of Iberoamerica. Iberoamerica understood as a cooperative project based on dialogue between different peoples of two continents, Iberian Peninsula and Latin America, as well as a dialogue of two very close languages, Spanish and Portuguese. This celebration may also serve to underscore the value of dialogue in all languages as a pivotal point for a more prosperous and united world. Thank you very much for this initiative. Thank you very much. I truly appreciate the delegation of Brazil for those comments and for having brought to the Permanent Council this very important celebration, as well as all other delegations who spoke and took the floor, even some of those who spoke Portuguese, to make their remarks, and they were not Portuguese-speaking countries. This really took an effort. The chair suggests that the Permanent Council take due note of all of the comments made, which will be in the minutes of this session. As there are no objections to that, it is so agreed. The chair, on behalf of the human rights of all delegates and the interpreters, and the Secretariat and the members of the Secretariat, proposes a break of 1 hour so that we can thereafter continue with the other items on the agenda. We have 2 other items on the agenda. They're very important, which is the farewell of one of our colleagues. So I would like to ask that all of you be punctual, and we will recommence at 14:50, 2:50. Thank you very much to everyone, and have a wonderful lunch. Bon appetit. Meeting is adjourned.